suggest you use Oriana's key?
It worked. What's inside? Know what to expect?
Vampires?
Mats. Tai. Zel. Me. Tau.
Vorenni veres nats atrannes. Avile clever.
Not one step further.
No! Wait!
The Unseen Elder. This is a monster I've discussed in great detail in the past, although there isn't really that much detail to go into. Here it seemingly does nothing, just sits in a cave waiting. But despite this, the impact of this character's introduction in Blood and Wine was incredible. I think I speak for everyone when I say, other than perhaps Gaunter O'Dim, this character is the most intimidating and powerful we encounter. That's in both the books and games. I'd say this is over Vilgefortz, Eredin, Villain Tretemirth, everything. This got me thinking, what is his purpose? Or at least, what was his purpose? We already know he wishes to go home, and he's guarding the cave we find him in as it's the first point of contact for vampires in the world of the Enshe, the world the Witcher story predominantly takes place in. But we also know that vampire society is complex and mysterious. There are vampire clans or tribes, there are laws they abide by, there are hierarchies between the different species. So what I want to do in this video is explore this and share my thoughts on what I and others have managed to work out about this fascinating creature. To begin, I want to discuss his role as the seeming leader of the vampire hierarchy. The Unseen Elder has the ability to command every other vampire species we know of. In addition, he's so old and so unique that he doesn't seem to fit into any known vampire species. In the journal entry for this character, he is simply called an extremely elder vampire, not a higher vampire, so he's something even more powerful. Vampires subserviently do whatever he asks of them, bringing him tribute and both respecting and fearing him. Therefore, based on the information we have, I think it's safe to say one of his purposes is to be the leader of what remains of vampire society. Although vampire society seems to be less ordered than it once was, but still in its current state, he, in a sense, rules. This brings me to my next point. What was his role in vampire society? To give a little bit of backstory, the vampires came into the world of The Witcher during the conjunction of the spheres. However, they all came through one portal that was located in the Unseen Elder's cave in Toussaint. Members from 3 tribes called Garasham, Amurun, and Tedet entered the world. Members from Garasham stayed in the areas the Witcher books and games take place in, so basically the main continent, but the tribe of Amurun crossed the sea to the west, and those from Tedet travelled east over the Blue Mountains. Therefore, I would like to theorise that the Unseen Elder is just the leader of the Garasham tribe, as they remained in the areas we see vampires, which are relatively close to the Unseen Elder's location, meaning they didn't go over the sea or over some mountains, they stayed in the kind of same geographic area as their leader. And perhaps the reason Garasham stayed in that area is exactly that, they wanted to be close to their leader. However, there is no exact confirmation of this, and as all of the vampire tribe's images are on the walls of his cave, I think it's more likely that of all of the vampires in the 3 tribes that came through, he is the oldest, and therefore not just the leader of Garasham, but perhaps all tribes. I would assume he does belong to a tribe, but there is no confirmation that it is Garasham. There is nothing that indicates he is from the Garasham tribe. There are multiple vampire tribe symbols in his cave, therefore he could belong to any of them. Perhaps when the vampires came through, the tribes did split and go in their different directions, but he might have belonged to Tedet or Amurun and just decided to stay in the cave. It seems to be an age-based society anyway, and I imagine it largely fell apart when they came through, so I like to imagine he was probably the leader. This is actually a big issue with the understanding of vampires, as the other tribes are incredibly mysterious. It is possible they might each have their own leaders that went off with them, but it's not confirmed, and I personally believe the Unseen Elder is the leader of all for the reasons I've stated. So from my perspective, vampires got sort of randomly pulled into the world of the Enshe, and he just happened to be the strongest and oldest one who was pulled in. This is interesting because their society is age-based, meaning whoever is the oldest is basically in charge, and there's evidence that the older a vampire is, the more powerful they are. For example, Oriana is said to be a very old Bruxa, hence why most tend to confuse her with a higher vampire like Regis or Detlef. Additionally, from a vampire's perspective, they are victims and refugees in the world. The Unseen Elder just maintained this mindset and stayed in the cave. From what I imagine, he probably didn't do that much from the very beginning, other than when vampires required his help. He seems very content staying in the cave, unmoving unless absolutely necessary. I like to imagine that when vampires arrived in the world of The Witcher, they occupied the old fortress of Teshemutna, which, if you look at a map, is pretty close to the Unseen Elder's cave, and then he just stayed unmoving. Perhaps the vampires fitted the cave with what little there is around him as a form of tribute, as in they built the cave around him. They built up everything that is there around him, just sort of staying there doing nothing. Most of it does seem like old elven architecture, but the art drawn around him must definitely have been done as some kind of tribute. So he is the leader, but not in an obvious way. I doubt he had much of a role other than perhaps vampires coming to him for advice or to get some kind of ruling on important decisions, although he probably killed most of them unless they were quick and to the point. This brings me to his most obvious purpose, which is to remain in the cave and wait for the portal of the vampire homeworld to reopen. Although of course there is no guarantee this will ever happen. However, something that surprised me when researching this video is he actually doesn't just sit there and do nothing. Occasionally, although very occasionally, his voice can be heard communicating with the vampires that decided to go out into the world. In Gwent, the standalone Witcher card game, a chest can be found, and within it, it states, "On their honour, the residents of Toussaint swear that sometimes on calm still nights, the waters of Lac Selavi carry strange foreign whispers that make skin crawl and hair stand on end. It is the Unseen Elder, speaking to his brothers and sisters, counselling patience. For one day, the gates between the worlds will open again, and they shall at last return from whence then came." So, if I was to summarise his purpose, I would say, firstly, he stands at the top of the current vampire hierarchy. It is unclear if he leads only the vampires in Toussaint or all on the continent, but it is said vampires came in from that location alone, then spread out, so it would therefore follow that he most likely rules all vampires that are on the continent, unless there was another powerful vampire that left the cave and, I don't know, found another cave. Secondly, although he seems to rule vampire society now, he also probably ruled vampire society when it was more structured and in a less widespread state. And by vampire society, of course I mean vampire society in the world of The Witcher. I don't mean where the vampires come from. I imagine there is probably complicated systems of tribes, etc., but I mean he's the most powerful that came in with those vampires, so he rules. Finally, he acts as the guardian to an area that still has connection to the vampire's homeworld. It was the point they came in, and if you explore this cave, it is certainly not a normal cave. Gravity behaves strangely, and the vampires there are unique to that location. Therefore, the point I want to leave you all with for the end of the video is this. Do you think the world of the vampires will reopen in a future Witcher game? Do you think, even then, is it possible for him to return? And if not, with all the vampires that could arrive in that conjunction, what might that mean for the world? An army of vampires headed by a creature that can easily defeat Geralt of Rivia in a matter of seconds. We already have evidence of this, so I would like to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, that's it for today's video, guys. Please check out my second channel, Ranger George, as I've made some videos on there recently regarding recent Witcher news. That includes some ideas I have for The Witcher 1 Remastered, and there's a couple other videos on there, and there is more planned on the way. These are subjects I don't think I could really cover on the main channel, but they are pretty interesting nonetheless, so go and subscribe and see if you agree with what I have to say. Thank you for watching today's video, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.